and I think to answer your question, what brought me to this point of offering a book is because I know what it looks like. I mean, I know what it feels like to be looking for someone who has had this experience, and I know how difficult it can be to navigate. And I know how important connectedness is, how important belongingness is, especially in our community. Like, when you have that as a need, there's so much that you can do. It is a human need, one that's actually not really talked about that much. There's food, there's water, but connectedness and belongingness is essential to anything that you choose to do and whether or not you believe you can do it. And that's exactly that. I did it for reference.
Mm-hmm. Wow. How did you not destroy yourself in the process? I know so many times in the Black community, we don't have therapists. People either run to a drug or run to some weed or run to some drink or run to fighting or run to something that's very destructive. What made you guys grab each other closer and work through it instead of very easily letting the rage let y'all destroy yourselves?
Wow. When you talk about the rage and its role in grief, I was just talking to a loved one today who experienced the loss of their grandmother, and she was expressing that, like, today I'm angry, right? And this anger is reminding me of anger I had as a child. So it's all coming back at once. And I know deeply about the recesses of anger and the rooms it can take you to, and what revenge feels like. My documentation of soul affirmations comes from my experience with the loss of my brother Kareem, who was shot and killed in 2014. And revenge tried to take me hostage in so many instances. And I saw all the games the enemy could play, and I felt all the flame, and I lost appetite, and I lost the ability to focus, and my calendar was rewired, and I couldn't quite grieve and go to court and plot revenge. All those types of things are consuming to actually be one person and have all those feelings. And I saw what it was doing to my siblings. So I was writing, when you ask what made us grab on to each other, Felicia and I had very different, like how our responses operationalized. We both felt it, but we fought different. And the thing I knew about grief deeply and intimately well is that the world doesn't understand it. The world is grief illiterate. And the reason why mothers particularly are often rushed back into some level of productivity is because nobody really understands the power and the dynamic of what happens when a woman loses a child. So I didn't want the world to mishandle Felicia while I was trying to provide. So I took a new assignment on life, and I was her first servant because I watched her deliver, right? Well, I watched her after delivery. I saw her see herself for the first time. So my job was to serve her first. And the reason why we grabbed each other so close is because I actually remember saying this in the hospital. Enemy, you get none. And I had to turn to the enemy and say that out loud because I knew how quickly it is begins to play with your mind and make you angrier than your ability to hear. And I remember I was angry. I was enraged. I had people to look out for me while I was angry because a man my size in a hospital, they gonna misunderstand my rage immediately. It don't matter what I'm going through. And because I understood that, and I shouldn't have to understand it in that moment. That shouldn't have been on my mind. But I know it is because of institutional design.
Black man in this society.
I know what it means. Who's gonna be able to handle this rage? Right? They're gonna call security.
Well, let me just side note that. Let's just say when someone didn't handle the rage, they got murdered, like Zumbi of Sinai. But go ahead, that's another story, but I just wanted to footnote that.
Contextualizing the Black lived experience of grief.
Yeah.
So it's not just another story, it couples very clearly with what we experienced. But we grabbed one another so I can make sure there was no room for divisiveness, the enemy to try to pose the idea that our differences was gonna make us distant, right? The thing you learn about grief when experiencing it. If Felicia noted that she took time to figure out how she felt. And I just want to take a second to acknowledge anybody who's experiencing grief who don't have the time
Right.
to investigate their feelings, who have other children or bills or just the reality of feeling damn near invisible because PG&E don't know that you're grieving, right? Or care, right? The bank don't know. So many instances, especially with black people. I'm talking about the black lived experience because it is separately and different and unique from any other person of color experience. The world is trained and it is incentivized on how to participate in the suffering of black people, right? And because it's incentivized, I wasn't gonna let them mishandle her. One of the things that made it possible for us to also turn to one another and hold one another, we had scheduled time of listening to one another. Mm-hmm. The crazy part is in a conversation.
What do you mean? Hold on, slow down. You had a what?
Scheduled time of listening
What
to
is
one
that?
another. Check. JR, you my partner. Let's just say me and you feel like kicking it. We're going to go back and forth, but we're going to have a rhythm of our conversation. We're going to listen to each other, but it has a rhythm naturally. And you may not be able to hear as well because you identifying with what I'm saying. I may not be able to hear you as well because nigga, I know that one too, right? So when that's happening, you can't actually hear as closely. Our church, the Way Berkeley, Pastor McBride came to visit us in the hospital. Felicia was angry. He said to me, God is not intimidated by her questions. When I knew God wasn't intimidated by her questions, I didn't have to monitor how she felt. She could be as angry as she wants.
What do you mean by that? Why?
In sometimes in faith, in organized faith, one can call it religion. The church is an organization.
Right.
People are afraid to question God because it might give the appearance that they are losing faith, right? And I don't know how to have faith without questioning God, right? But her questions were fierce. They were fast and they were strong and they were different from how I was fighting. I fought in surrender on my knees because I understood how the enemy could just take me on a roll. So you get nothing. And our church funded our first, I don't know the term, maybe a year it feels like, of our therapy.
Yeah.
So our church, check this out. Our church has a therapist on retainer that does not attend the church. So it's not somebody in your business.
Right.
Right? This is an outside professional, a black woman. And they set us up with therapy. And that was one of the most important times.
Well, let me ask you, not to cut the story, but therapy. A lot of black people are scared of therapy.
Yep.
I found myself feeling like I'm not gonna tell this person my business. I don't know who this person is. I don't know how they gonna judge or not judge me. I don't know. How was that experience for y'all?
I'm gonna give it to Fee, but I'm gonna say something. I'm thinking ahead of the curve right now. It would be advantageous if the Ministry of Information podcast had a resource available for black therapists that were vetted by our community. The same way we value, that way I know I'm sending you to somebody safe, right? I'm not sending you to the system. I'm sending you to one of us. The same way your baby came to one of us, we should be able to say, you know what? I got a therapist for that, one of us. And that helped us so much because she was very much one of us. At every level of identity, she was one of us. So that helped a whole lot. And I recognize it's not everybody's experience because I still had to do things. The church responded faster than the state or my insurance. So they were the first agency to respond, took care of their own people. By the time the state processed us and had us connected to some therapist that was absolutely stressful, right? I'm watching the clock like I just can't wait for this shit to be over, right? I don't need you to get in my way and I don't want to get in yours. So let's just get this term over with. You can sign whatever you got to sign and I can go about taking care of my family. That's how it felt when I was dealing with the state, to keep it a buck. So I understand our distrust of that system. I understand why that doesn't feel like it helps. You need therapy to post debrief after the therapist your insurance give you. No lie. This shit is traumatic.
Yeah.
And in many cases, we had each other for that. And I just hold a moment of deep breath and empathy for somebody who's listening and saying, damn, I had a total opposite experience. right? And just that moment of seeing them in visibility is what helps create that connectedness. Because grief ain't something you start and it ends. Once it start, it's with you in different waves and different durations for the rest of your time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think when it came to therapy, I asked for it, to be quite honest with you. I knew that there was somebody at the church that they had like on reserve. And so I let Pastor Mike know, just like, hey man, I need a place to talk, because I wasn't feeling well. Like I was wrestling with whether or not I should be getting over it, whether or not I should or shouldn't be questioning God, like Kariga said. But like, I was livid. I was angry with God. I was angry with what happened to me. Like, why this had to happen to me? I've had traumatic experiences in my life. I was deserving of this. Like, how did we get here? I lived right. I worked out. I ate right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like I did everything that I could have. And what happened to me, it left me feeling very, very angry. And I knew that if I wanted to be sane, I needed to be able to talk to someone. But like Kariga so eloquently explained, like, I understand the distrust. I actually did have to, I was going to a therapist that was assigned to me through the insurance. And it did not meet my needs. It was actually more about getting me back into work. And it was like, when do you think you'll be ready? And it's kind of like, what do you mean, when do you think I'll...
Capitalism, huh? That's
exactly.
all they was worried about.
That's all they were worried about. And I'm incredibly grateful for the way and how they provided that for me. I've never experienced anything like that in my life, but to me, that makes the most sense. That's what communities should do if they have the resources. Yeah.